It all came down to this. One man. One kick. One chance to erase a century of failure, a decade of obsession, and one heartbreaking moment in Moscow that had haunted this club for 4 long years. The music of the Champions League anthem, usually a song of glory, felt like a funeral march under the lights of the Allianz Arena. The roar of the crowd, 62,500 people, most of them Bavarians praying for their home turf coronation, felt like a physical weight pressing down on the shoulders of the man walking toward the penalty spot. His name was Didier Drogba, and he was staring into the void of the club's entire history. He adjusted the ball. The patch of grass beneath it felt sacred, charged with impossible energy. He didn't just carry the weight of the scoreline, 3 penalties taken, 3 converted, with the score tied at 3-all, he carried the ghost of Moscow. The rain that night in 2008, the late red card, the agonizing minutes watching John Terry slip, falling to his knees and sending the ball wide. That loss, that brutal, soul-crushing failure against Manchester United, hadn't just been a defeat, it had been a curse. It had taken a team built with billions and proved that some victories cannot be bought, only earned through suffering. That kick, missed by their captain, had become the ultimate symbol of Roman Abramovich's grand experiment, an unending, violent drive for the one trophy that perpetually eluded them. And now, 4 years later, with the owner watching, with John Terry standing injured on the sideline, Drogba was the last man left to exorcise the demon. He took 5 steps back. The world held its breath. But to understand the crushing weight of this single moment, you must first rewind. You must understand the obsession. The Abramovich era wasn't about building a football club, it was about conquering football, immediately. When the Russian arrived in 2003, he didn't buy a team, he bought a project, a relentless, money-no-object assault on the European elite. He poured untold fortunes into the squad, ushering in the arrival of José Mourinho, the special one, who promised to deliver everything. And they did deliver the domestic trophies, Premier League titles, FA Cups, League Cups, but the European Cup remained the missing jewel, the singular, shining obsession that made every other triumph feel hollow. They reached semi-finals, only to be stopped by the tactical genius of Rafa Benitez's Liverpool or the cold pragmatism of Manchester United. The semi-final exits were agonizing, yes, but they were footnotes. The real trauma was Moscow. The rain-soaked night in 2008, when the dream was finally within touching distance. They were tied 1-1. The game was decided by the cruelty of the shootout. Frank Lampard, still grieving the loss of his mother, scored his penalty. Michael Ballack scored. Ashley Cole scored. But then, the captain, John Terry, the heart of the team, slipped on the wet turf and sent the ball wide of the post. The camera captured Roman Abramovich's face, a stone mask of shock, disbelief, and a terrifying realization. The checkbook was powerless. That failure was woven into the DNA of the club, a ghost in the Stamford Bridge shadows. For 4 years, every signing, every manager sacking, every training session, was geared toward one goal, getting back to that moment and finishing the job. It was an intolerable pressure, a mental weight that crushed coaches year after year. The managerial merry-go-round became a running joke in football. Ancelotti won the double and was fired the next season. Di Matteo, the man who scored the fastest FA Cup final goal, was just another caretaker, another interim. The owner's patience was zero. Success was fleeting, failure was terminal. And this brings us to the low point of the obsession, the very beginning of the impossible 2011 to 2012 campaign. The season began with Andre Villas-Boas, hailed as the next Mourinho, a young revolutionary brought in to transition the aging, highly successful core of Terry, Lampard, Drogba, and Cech into a new, fast-paced era. But the legends resisted. They felt marginalized, pushed aside. The chemistry shattered. Results plummeted. By February 2012, the project had utterly collapsed. The team was in open civil war, spiraling out of the Premier League's top 4, facing an embarrassing exit from the Champions League, having lost 3-1 to Napoli in the first leg of the round of 16. Villas-Boas, the chosen one, was sacked. The club was in complete disarray, staring down the barrel of a humiliating, trophyless season that would see them miss out on the Champions League entirely. It was a disaster, a true crisis. And into this toxic, broken environment stepped Roberto Di Matteo. The atmosphere around Di Matteo was that of a temporary firefighter, a familiar face brought in only to appease the disillusioned, aging core until the summer. Nobody, absolutely nobody, believed he was the solution. He was the caretaker, the short-term bandage on a gaping wound. But RDM, a former Chelsea favorite, understood the club's soul better than the ambitious revolutionaries who had preceded him. He didn't try to change the system, he simply appealed to the pride of the veterans, the very players Villas-Boas had tried to bench. He asked them to fight for themselves, for the shirt, and for the obsession. And the legends responded. The first impossible hurdle was Napoli. Trailing 3-1 from the first leg, Stamford Bridge was a cauldron of nervous hope and deep pessimism. The veteran core, Terry, Lampard, Drogba, knew this was their last stand. Failure meant relegation to the Europa League and the end of their era. The game was an absolute war. Drogba, fueled by desperation, scored the opener. John Terry, the captain, redeemed his Moscow ghost moment, powering in a crucial header to level the aggregate. But it was Frank Lampard, slotting a ferocious penalty in extra time, who completed the miracle. A 4-1 victory on the night, a 5-4 aggregate win, forged by sheer willpower and a fierce refusal to die. They hadn't just won, they had resurrected themselves. The ghost of Moscow stirred, realizing the fight was not yet over. But the next stage was the stuff of nightmares, the semi-final against Pep Guardiola's Barcelona. The greatest team on earth. The team that had redefined football, playing with a dizzying, relentless possession that made opponents chase shadows. This was the acid test, the one opponent no one believed this shaky, transitional Chelsea side could beat. The first leg at Stamford Bridge was a lesson in suffering. Barcelona dominated the ball with 73% possession, attacking relentlessly, passing through the air and the ground, reducing the Chelsea players to desperate, last-ditch tackles. It felt like an endless wave crashing against a fragile sea wall. But Chelsea held. They held because of the sheer, bloody-minded refusal of every player to give an inch. And then, in a rare, breathtaking counter-attack, Ramires burst down the left, crossed low, and Didier Drogba, playing the lone striker role like a warrior, buried the ball. 1-0 to Chelsea. It was a smash-and-grab victory, unfair by all metrics of possession, but earned through an epic demonstration of tactical discipline and defensive courage. The second leg in the Camp Nou, however, was immediately dubbed the Mission Impossible. This was going into the lion's den, and the lion was wounded. Barcelona was angry. And the first half was a horror show that seemed to confirm everyone's worst predictions. Busquets scored. The stadium erupted. Then, a moment of madness, John Terry, the captain, the man who had fought so hard to banish the Moscow ghost, was given a straight red card for a needless, reckless challenge. Chelsea was down to 10 men, away from home, in the cauldron of the Camp Nou, against the greatest passing team in history, losing 2-1 on aggregate. The ghost of Moscow wasn't just stirring, it was laughing. The game felt over. Chelsea was being toyed with. Messi, Iniesta, Xavi, they controlled every inch of the pitch. Then, Iniesta scored. 2-0, 3-1 aggregate. The dream was dead. The television commentators were already writing the eulogy. But in a moment of pure, blinding brilliance, born from tactical freedom and pure desperation, Ramires received a long pass, saw the keeper off his line, and clipped a magnificent, dipping finish over the head of Victor Valdez. 3-2 aggregate. That one goal was enough to send Chelsea through on away goals. The stadium went silent. But the drama wasn't finished. Lionel Messi was felled in the box. Penalty. The greatest player in the world, with the chance to kill the game and end the curse once and for all, stepped up. Petr Cech stood tall. Messi shot, and slammed the ball against the crossbar. The collective gasp in the stadium was swallowed by the roar of the 10 Chelsea players, running to hug Cech, their savior. But there was still time. Every second felt like a geological age. Barcelona attacked. The 10 Chelsea players defended with the kind of primal, savage energy usually reserved for a fight for survival. And then, the ultimate, beautiful, final counterpunch. Deep into injury time, Fernando Torres, the much-maligned, record-signing striker, found himself with acres of space, sprinting alone toward the goal. Valdez came out. Torres simply rounded him, and slotted the ball into the empty net. 2-2 on the night. The comeback was not just complete, it was a defiant, world-shaking miracle. The team of rejects, led by the caretaker, had slain the giant. But the victory came at a terrible cost. In the chaotic, magnificent fight, 4 key players, Ramires, Terry, Mireless, and Ivanovic, earned suspensions. They would miss the final. They had earned the ticket to the promised land, but they would be forced to watch the climax from the stands. And so, we arrive at Munich. The final was held in the Allianz Arena, the home of their opponents, Bayern Munich. It was an away game masquerading as a final. Chelsea were decimated by suspension, forced to field a cobbled-together defense that included Ryan Bertrand, making his Champions League debut. The narrative was inescapable: Chelsea had used up all their luck against Barcelona. Now, against a strong, full-strength Bayern team in their own backyard, the curse would finally deliver the terminal blow. The atmosphere was hostile, a sea of red and white. The game was a tight, agonizing spectacle of containment. Chelsea sat deep, relying on their defensive discipline and the heroic work of Petr Cech. Bayern probed, hit the post, had shots cleared off the line. It was a war of attrition, agonizingly slow, a chess match where Chelsea intentionally sacrificed all of their attacking pieces just to hold the board. For 82 minutes, they suffered. For 82 minutes, they held the line. But football is cruel, and destiny often demands a final sacrifice. In the 83rd minute, Toni Kroos chipped a cross into the box, and Thomas Müller, the German predator, headed the ball into the ground. It bounced over Cech and into the net. 1-0 to Bayern. The Allianz Arena exploded. The sound was deafening, a visceral, guttural release of German joy. The game was over. The curse had returned. Bayern had 8 minutes, plus injury time, to see it out. The commentators were already anointing Bayern as champions. But this Chelsea team, this band of rejects and veterans, knew the narrative of suffering too well. They had died and resurrected themselves too many times to fold now. In the 88th minute, with the clock winding down, they won a corner. Juan Mata trotted over to take it. The delivery was powerful, curling, dipping, a ball of desperate hope. And Didier Drogba, the warrior, the man carrying the weight of the entire decade, soared above the Bayern defense. He powered the header, not just into the net, but into the history books. 1-1. Silence in Munich. Complete, shocked, utter silence. The sound of 62,000 jaws dropping simultaneously. The ghost of Moscow had been stunned into retreat. The goal bought them extra time, a gift of 30 minutes. But the psychological war was not over. Early in the first period of extra time, Drogba, the hero, clipped Frank Ribery in the box. Penalty to Bayern. The cruel irony of fate. The man who had just saved them had now put the entire final on a knife edge. Arjen Robben, the former Chelsea winger, the clinical Dutchman, stepped up to take the kick. It was a high-pressure moment that felt identical to the Terry penalty 4 years prior. Robben struck it low, hard, and to the side, and Petr Cech, the man whose helmet hit a warrior's heart, stretched out a massive hand and saved it. A gargantuan, earth-shaking save. The penalty curse had been broken. It was a sign. This was not fate, this was a fight. And they were still fighting. The game drifted through the final minutes, exhausted men running on fumes, until the final whistle blew. The 2012 Champions League final would be decided by the same random cruelty that had shattered Chelsea in 2008, a penalty shootout. The tension was suffocating. Philipp Lahm scored. Juan Mata missed. The curse was back. Bayern led 1-0. Gomez scored. David Luiz smashed his in. Neuer scored. Frank Lampard, the man who had played with a broken heart for 4 years, scored. Cole scored. The pressure was unbelievable. It came down to Bastian Schweinsteiger, the German general. He struck the ball, and hit the post. The ball rebounded away. The final score was 3-3. And that brought us back to the spot. Drogba. 5 steps back. He stared at the ball, then at the keeper. His mind was clear, his focus absolute. He had faced down the owner's obsession, the media pressure, the impossible Barcelona team, the hostile Bayern crowd, and the terror of the Moscow ghost. He had one last kick to deliver the promised land. He ran up, slow, deliberate, calm. And he slotted the ball into the bottom corner. Not a fierce strike, but a placement of cold, terrifying certainty. Goal. Chelsea have won the Champions League. The eruption of emotion was total, visceral, uncontrollable. The players in the stands, Terry, Ramires, Mireless, sprinted onto the pitch, weeping, hugging, screaming. Roberto Di Matteo, the caretaker who was meant to fail, was instantly canonized. Drogba, sinking to his knees, his arms raised to the heavens, had redeemed every single penny, every single sacking, every single defeat of the Abramovich era. The curse was broken. The obsession was fulfilled. The team of rejects, the caretaker's squad, the men who refused to die, had conquered Europe in the most impossible, dramatic, and unforgettable fashion imaginable. It wasn't a tactical victory, it was a victory of the soul. And that is the truth behind their greatest night. It wasn't the inevitable triumph of a rich club, it was a miraculous escape from destiny, proving that sometimes, in the face of impossible odds, the sheer will to survive is enough to achieve immortality. But the story of Chelsea's madness, their chaos, and their relentless, often self-destructive ambition didn't end that night. They continued to fire managers, they continued to spend billions, and they continued to live life on the edge. If this story of chaos and conquest, of obsession and ultimate redemption, has gripped you, then you know this isn't the end of the secrets. If you want to know the real reason Di Matteo was fired just months after winning the trophy, or the explosive boardroom drama that led to the sacking of Mourinho the second time, hit the like button and subscribe right now. The trophy was won, but the madness was just getting started. What part of Chelsea's relentless cycle of chaos should we expose next? Let me know in the comments.